Street Fighter V had a problem. Now you might be asking yourselves, which one? Fair question. This was a game that was plagued with issues from release stemming from its rushed development and often incompetent management. But I believe there was a core tenet, a core issue at the root of Street Fighter V's problems: player identity and skill expression. This here is the story of how a rambunctious team of new developers and new management managed to solve Street Fighter V's core issues and steer the oil tanker of a ship that is the Street Fighter franchise back into a promising direction both for today's players and the audience of tomorrow. And this story can be told through the design decisions and gameplay mechanics of Street Fighter V's final season of DLC characters, which almost did not come to be. Now, while this is the story of how Street Fighter V had a core issue and how that was solved, you might be wondering to yourself, why do I have Street Fighter 4 on the screen here instead? Well, I feel like to properly communicate what the issue was with Street Fighter V, we have to look back at the previous entry, which is of course Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 4's combo system was pretty straightforward in the sense that it just revolves around the basic mechanics of chain cancels for your lights. You can chain cancel lights. It had some basic links as well. You can link moves after each other, and of course special cancels. And all of these are present within Street Fighter V as well. So in this game, there is no input buffer, meaning if a move links to the other move, you have to explicitly time the move. So a lot of links in this game were fairly easy. So a lot of links were like 3-frame links where you had a 3-frame window in order to time your link, 360 for the second. But this also left open kind of like a sandbox type of system where the frame data is there. You can figure out any combo you possibly can with the given tools in your disposal. So Balrog is a pretty interesting example of this because he has a lot of very basic combos that you can do, which are very easy in Street Fighter 4. So I can do things like jab, jab, short headbutt, and that is not a difficult combo at all and kind of mirrors the type of combo complexity you would have in Street Fighter 5. But at the same time, there's a lot of very high execution combos that require 1-frame links. So a 1-frame link is simply just a normal link. You press one button and the next one after, but you have to time the button in the tightest precision window possible. The game runs like 60 frames per second. The tightest precision is a 1-frame link, 1/60th of a second leniency. So it becomes a little bit weird because certain combos don't look impressive in this game, but they're actually extremely difficult to execute. The jab to medium here, I believe, is a 1-frame link, which doesn't look like much, but it's the difference between, like maybe 20 extra damage in your combo. So for example, a common combo situation with Raw would be something like doing this kind of a loop, like dumping meter to get this loop. You probably wouldn't do too many of these. But if I were to do 4, it would do 276 damage. If I wanted to do a little bit more damage than a different Balrog player though, instead of doing jab jab between each one of these EX uppers, I could instead opt for the more difficult link by doing jab to medium. So that did 376 damage instead, which is like 100 more damage. So that was something that I could practice and implement that not any ROG off the street could do without putting in an equivalent amount of work in training mode, right? It just shows that there is a basic route that you could use with easier execution, or you can choose to practice your link timing and opt for different routes which have a higher risk of dropping. So you can start to see how there's a decision tree forming here where players who are more practiced in their execution could start going for more and more riskier combo options, which are harder to do, but might yield more reward in the form of damage, pressure, or meter build or something like that. But there's often situations where you can just rely on Old Faithful, basic short jab headbutt, nice and easy, get some guaranteed damage, which means there's honestly a lot of variety that you would see in combos, and there's a lot of tension when you would see combos because there's always the risk of dropping the combo because you have to time everything pretty accurately in order to do so. For example, Sako, legendary fighting game player, was known in the Street Fighter 4 era for having incredible execution and for demonstrating combos that basically only Sako could perform, and he's done this across many titles. But this is an example of a combo that he developed against Rufus, where you actually get an extra stomp loop with Evil Ryu because of some weird hurtbox interaction. Needless to say, this combo has tons of 1-frame links all over the place and is incredibly difficult to perform and very rare to see in a match. I mean, you've never seen this full sequence performed in an actual competitive match, only bits and pieces of it. But Sokka was able to set himself apart in many ways by just having better execution than people who played the same character, and it was very easy to recognize when Sokka was playing Evil Ryu or Ibuki versus other players playing the character. So moving on to Street Fighter V, this game made a lot of changes to how the input system and combo system work from Street Fighter IV. The main thing that you might have noticed if you've ever played this game is that links feel a lot easier, and that's no mistake. This game has a really big change to the input buffer system, which basically did not exist except for special moves in Street Fighter IV. So basically, a big part of the buffer is that it makes one-frame links obsolete. The buffer, I believe, is about a 5-frame buffer, meaning if you press a button within 5 frames of when you're able to next move, the game will read that input and give it to you right when you're able to move. In Street Fighter IV, if you press a button too soon while you're still recovering from another input, it would simply say, sorry, too bad, you didn't press it when you're able to, and it wouldn't come out, which is what created these one-frame link scenarios where you had to time things precisely. However, in this game, there's a buffer. So, for example, the standing meaty punch from Nikali is +6 on hit. It's also a 6-frame startup, so yeah, it does link into itself. In Street Fighter IV, an earlier title, since there's no buffer, this would be a 1-frame link, meaning I'd have to time it very precisely in order to do it's the toughest link possible. It would be very, very difficult, and pretty much only experts of the character would consistently be able to land that link in a match. That's not how this game operates, though. In fact, because of the buffer, I can just simply mash the move. This would not work in Street Fighter IV at all, but it's a +6 move into a 6-frame move. It's pretty much always going to link. Like, the complexity and the combo system from this game does not come from links, because links are meant to be much more easier in this game. So the complexity in this game becomes, how do you convert the hit that you get? Street Fighter IV said, hey, you have a lot of chances to convert your hit into a full combo, but you might have to actually time the buttons. This game goes, you need to convert right away and be situationally aware of what's going on, if it's a counter hit, your range, and what options you have after, but the links are easy. So it's more about situational awareness in Street Fighter V rather than any kind of link complexity. However, this started to show some problems, especially with the first season of Street Fighter V characters. Because the combo complexity was much more reduced and it was much more about situational awareness, there became a bit of both player and viewer fatigue, I would say, in regards to what people would see on the screen, because it became very difficult to do combos that were different than what everyone else was doing, right? Like, anyone could pretty much do the max damage combos with these characters. You just had to know the routes more than actually know the timing of anything. So this combo I'm doing here with Nikali, it's very damaging, and it's also very easy to do. At no point in that combo am I concerned about dropping it. I would be concerned about actually landing the hit to do the combo in a real match, but the combo itself, any Nikali player can do, all of them. So the question started to become, how do high-level players differentiate themselves from the average player? Now, the things that they did that with were obviously good neutral, whiff punishing, conversions, anti-airs, awareness, decision making, but a lot of those are kind of subtle to most viewers, and what people would see is just everyone does the same combos, everyone plays the same. So this became a big issue with the game and a common complaint, because people felt that because anyone can do a combo without risk of dropping it, comebacks were very much a factor, and anyone could lose to anyone is what the saying went, because no one had to risk dropping the combo. If I was going to do a combo that did half your life in Street Fighter IV, generally it involved doing some tricky links that I could potentially drop, and if I drop the combo I could be punished for it. But Street Fighter V kind of reduced that likelihood and made it so that it was much more accessible to anyone to do big damage on a moment's notice without having to actually learn the combo system as extensively as you had to do in the past. While this was definitely an issue for Season 1 characters for the most part, there were definitely exceptions, especially with the DLC characters that started to come out. For example, Urien had a lot of mechanics that weren't based around V-Trigger, which gave him a lot of different combo options and skill expression. His headbutt loops are the classic go-to example of combos that required situational awareness and execution. That is a down-up charge move, so you have to hold down, go to neutral, press jab, then up to press the headbutt and time your headbutt option, and it definitely took a lot of practice and execution to do that, and not every Yuri would go for these kind of loops. And we saw other characters as the game progressed that often involved really high execution mechanics. Menat with V-Trigger 1 was definitely one of the big introductions of really high execution mechanics in the game with her V-Trigger 1 orb system. In fact, this is the character that Sako gravitated towards because of that. There's a lot of mix-ups, mechanics, and combo options that you can employ with the V-Trigger 1. So while these characters did exist, there were still a lot of complaints about the inconsistency of skill and player expression within Street Fighter V. So there were some characters that added more of this flavor, but for the most part, it was kind of inconsistent, and there was only bursts of these characters that really had interesting system mechanics that allowed them to express themselves and separate themselves from the rest of the pack. However, during this whole time, we had one man at the head of the Street Fighter V ship, and that was Ono. And Ono departed from Capcom around August 2020. And at this time, we figured that the game of Street Fighter V had gone through its final release of DLC with Seth. So Gil was released, and Seth was supposed to be the final DLC release character until COVID happened. And with that, we had a change in the Street Fighter V leadership. We had Nakayama join on as the director and Matsumoto join on as the Street Fighter producer. And we had an announced new final season of Street Fighter V DLC coming our way due to, the COVID delaying production of the upcoming unannounced project of Street Fighter 6. Dan is the first one that released once they took the reins of the ship here, and he's back. Dan is typically a joke character, but I will say Dan in Street Fighter V is actually a legitimate threat and has taken important sets in Street Fighter V's history so far. And it all comes down to one of the most unique mechanics in the game, which is his taunt cancel with V skill 2. So if you just activate it alone, he just kind of does this taunt here, which doesn't seem to do much besides like a little bit of damage, but it's also like punishable on block. So you definitely don't want to have it come out on block. However, if you time another button follow-up with the taunt cancel correctly, you can actually do another action and cancel the taunt early. So here I'm doing Fierce Punch into Fierce Punch. But if I mess up the timing, I press the Fierce Punch too soon, for example, it doesn't come out, and I get the taunt, which is unsafe on block. And if I do it too late, it also doesn't come out. So I'm not sure the exact window, but basically you have to time all these cancels, which allow you to get really good pressure and allow you to keep the momentum going and cancel his far range heavy moves, which are normally not cancelable, and do other actions after them. And you can even cancel things on whiff as well. And it starts to become very interesting how you can string together your pressure options. Now, I'm very bad with Dan because I don't play this character, but you can already see the fact that I'm bad with him shows that this is a skill-based mechanic, which when added together allows Dan to get really impressive combos and pressure sequences. So here's a pretty infamous clip of Daigo watching Mototo, who is regarded as the strongest Dan player from Japan, pressuring with Dan here. And you can see here, every time you kind of see that slight stagger in his animation, it's him doing V-skill cancels. And he does things like big buttons into V-skill cancel, then whiffing a light to reset the pressure, and then doing another button after. So it's very difficult to tell when his pressure sequences are ending. And he just keeps on going and going and going. So Dan actually becomes a really high execution pressure monster with his V-skill mechanic, because you can easily mess it up. If at any point he messed up the timing, which is unique off all the buttons, he would just simply get that taunt move, which is potentially punishable on block, or at least would end his turn. So it takes a master of the character to really piece together and fully understand the mechanic, but you can see the results are deadly when someone actually masters how to do the taunt cancels. So the next character in the DLC release of the final season is Rose, and this character is pretty interesting in the fact that she kind of breaks a lot of the Street Fighter V meta and focuses a lot more on zoning control. She has a lot of really interesting tools at her disposal. She, of course, has her traditional Soul Spark Fireball with different speeds, but she also has this interesting Soul Explosion. I guess she calls it Soul Punish, but it actually puts up this sort of mine on the screen which can interact and clash with projectiles. And of course she has like her anti-air scarf DP as well, so if you try to start jumping over her zoning, she has options to anti-air you, and her classic drill, and a bunch of unique buttons that have a lot of range. So she really has pretty interesting tools that require controlling the screen in different ways, and her slide can go under projectiles, so she can actually zone pretty effectively in this game. She can throw fireballs, of course, while this explosion is still up. And on top of that, her V-skill systems also include projectiles. So V-skill 1, she can throw cards at people while also applying all these status effects and keeping things on the screen. If instead you choose V-skill 2, you also get the addition of the Soul Orb, basically, which was her Ultra 2 in Street Fighter 4. So she can set things up, you know, build up her orbs, get 2 of them on the screen. So she can really stack her pressure and everything. And on top of that, her V triggers are pretty mix-up intensive. Her V trigger 1 gives her this cross-up teleport, which she can instantly use to mix people up, go in front of them, go cross up behind, stay in front to bait them. And it's really gnarly, this instant cross-up mix-up. It's pretty tough to deal with in the heat of the moment. While her V trigger 2 actually gives her really unique custom combos here. And if you really optimize this V trigger, you can get really intense combos that are very unique, and you can really set up unique mix-ups and get a lot of damage from them. So I also tried my hand at trying some of these Rose combos. She has really unique combos that are very difficult to master with that V trigger 2 if you situationally apply them, and can get really big damage if you line everything up. So that V trigger 2 is definitely tough to master, but extremely strong if you do so. And in general, she just doesn't really offer you big damage without really understanding the character. Like, even her stun combos often require unique setups, like setting down the Soul Punish explosion when you get the stun, and then doing unique things like allowing yourself to get new combo extensions with the explosion during the middle of the combo. It takes a lot of situational awareness with their combos, and so you definitely see very unique combos from this character based on how much they've mastered the mechanics. She's not an easy character to pick up and play, and you can really tell a Rose specialist from one who just plays her with their solid footsies and ground game, which is still very strong, but you can tell that people who actually master all her mechanics and all of her combo routes, because it's very intense and expansive. If you want to really get damage out of this character, you have to optimize her to her fullest. And of course, the next character up in this final season of Street Fighter V DLC is Oro. And Oro is a bit of an oddball character at first glance, not just because he's holding a turtle and his rather grotesque appearance, but he kind of has a weird moveset where he doesn't really specialize in anything. He kind of has just whatever mid-range. He has a couple of okay pokes, like his crouching medium punch, and towards medium is decent. He does have a fireball, but the fireball is a charge fireball, and it's kind of the slow startup. If you usually have a charged fireball, you might want one more like Guile, which has a lot faster recovery. And he also has Chicken Feet, which is kind of a weird move. It's just a jumping move. He hurls himself at you. If he lands on your head, he can go over fireballs potentially. He has some unique things like a double jump. He can alter his movement. His V skill 1 is very unique in that it gives him this extra fireball that he can put on the screen with multiple hits and throw fireballs behind it, and that allows him to set up some zoning. He has a unique mechanic with his EX fireball, which does actually track you, and it eventually dissipates, but it does have tracking on it, so it can track people down. But what really starts setting him apart is how this all pieces together on top of his anti-air and juggle potential. And this is what makes him a character for great skill expression. He has a ton of combo routes and anti-air options available to him. He actually has some of the most consistent high damage from anti-airs in the game, and requires pretty intense knowledge of his juggle properties. So for example, from his medium punch, which does launch in the air, if you get one hit, you want to do jump and medium kick for max damage, and that allows you to do this re-jump combo. Medium into the chicken, DP juggle. But if you get 2 hits, the medium kick to the medium punch relaunch was not going to work. So you're going to want to do, instead if you get 2 hits, you want to do jump fierce, get the second hit, get the relaunch combo. But you can also do different things. Like for example, if you have charge, you can do medium punch into the heavy fireball and follow up from that if you're at the right angle for it. All these options start kind of stacking together, and you can keep building them on top of each other. So he requires a pretty intense knowledge of spacing and juggle awareness for the character to maximize him. So you can clearly tell when someone is experienced with the situations they're put in with Oro versus someone who's not, because you can see the difference in damage they achieve and the juggles they produce, which also eventually leads into, at the end, his V trigger. Basically, it's a simple concept. Every time you press a button, the stones follow your button in a sort of set pattern based on the button you press. Now, you can't activate the stones too soon because they have to return to their home position before they'll send again. So, for example, if I do like Crouching Strong, they do this pattern. If I press them too soon, you see I can't send them out twice. And if I press it before all of them come home, only the ones that make it home actually send out. So this allows you to do like really big damage combos if you land a random hit just by pressing buttons, really. Like, you don't have to really think about it too much. But if you optimize it to actually get the most out of it, he becomes extremely technical to squeeze all the juice out of it. So you can really piece all this together to do huge amounts of damage and use really advanced techniques to really separate yourself from another Oro player. So Oro is actually a high execution character if you so choose to be, and also high situational awareness character with this very, very extensive ability to juggle the opponent. And the next character in the DLC release for this season was Akira from Rival Schools. And if you know my personal vendetta against Akira, you might be thinking, oh man, the devs are on a hot streak until this character, but she does have some pretty unique aspects to her. She has really strong heavy buttons that cover a lot of range and move her forward horizontally, and they also crush counter as well. So she's definitely in that sort of like big crush counter category. I don't believe the Fierce Punch crush counters, but the Towards Fierce one does. She has, you know, the basic sort of like low forward confirm style that you can use with a lot of the characters in Street Fighter V. It has this elbow mechanic or a special move so that she can have these combo enders with the elbow throughout the EX1 for more corner carry and for sometimes just random pressure as well. But what I think really sets her apart in terms of optimization and skill expression is really her V skill 2 to me. Her V skill 2 is this launcher move, which you hold up to follow them up with, and you actually get custom launcher combos like reminiscent of other game series like Rival Schools. But you hold up with it and you can start just kind of juggling the opponent in the air kind of freely. There are definitely some rules to managing the height and optimizing this. So I don't really play Akira, so I'm not very good at using this mechanic. But this mechanic plus her V-Trigger 2 really allow her to get really extensive combos. Her V-Trigger 1 is unique as in it's just this assist from Daigo. He comes down for nasty cross-up setups. You can just kind of call him at will and then just jump over the opponent and mix them up. They don't know what side they're on, and then, you know, the explosion follow-up allows for combos. But with the V-Skill 2 plus V-Trigger 2 combination, you can get really dramatic results. So for example, we have this sequence from Listen the Prince, and you can see just how impressive these V-Skill plus V-Trigger 2 combos can become. So he uses the V-Skill launcher there to propel the opponent in the air, and you can see the stinky leg juggles, the V-Trigger 2 extensions. The V-Trigger 2 gives her these sort of combination of moves. She gets a Rekka sequence out of it, and Fireball, Invincible, Launcher as well, which allows for more combo extensions. So all that combined, you get some big damage and you get some interesting juggles. So I don't know how to do these combos. It takes someone who actually masters this character to know how to do this. And you can really see the difference in Akira players when they really know how to use these mechanics together. Finally, we're on to the last character from the final season of Street Fighter V DLC and the final character to be added to the Street Fighter V roster. We have, of course, Luke. Now, you might be thinking up to this point that the new developers had such a great track record with all their DLC characters, and then Luke came along. Yeah, Luke is a little bit strong right now in this season of Street Fighter V, and some people might be tired of seeing him, but you know, but I'm pretty sure Luke is this strong in the game to be the advertisement for Street Fighter 6, because he is the poster boy for Street Fighter 6. So I think they intended for him to be a little bit sauced up in Street Fighter 5 to ensure he didn't drop and then go underused, so that we get used to seeing him on the screen. So yeah, Luke is very, very strong, and strong in a very traditional sense for the most part. He has confirmable lows that lead into good damage, extremely great fireball, which is more like a laser, awesome zoning options, huge damage, extremely effective DP, combos that do too much damage, far-reaching moves that can confirm into knockdowns from very far away, the furthest jab range in the game essentially to check people and confirm the knockdowns as well. Great V triggers, great V skills. He pretty much does it all in a very fundamentally sound way. However, that does not mean he does not have interesting mechanics that allow players to set themselves apart from each other when playing this character. So he has a special move here called the Flash Knuckle, and the light and the medium and the heavy and EX all do different variations of this punch move and have different utility. But the interesting thing about it is, besides the EX version, he's able to charge this move to different levels. So for example, if I were to do just the level 1 launcher here, I can't really do much with it after the fact, but I am able to actually charge this to a level 2 and get a juggle after here. So if you combo from a normal, you can actually time the level 2 charge properly by holding the button down and releasing it in the right window. However, if you hold the button down for too long, you'll get to the level 3 and they'll just block it, right? So there's actually a window, a timing here for how long you should hold the button. And if you just tap it, you get to level 1. For releasing a button, the buffer does not apply. So when you do a partial charge, it's about releasing the button. So you have no buffer to aid your timing of when you release a button. So it's a creative way to get around the buffer system to still have strict timing that goes beyond a 5-frame window and eliminate the buffer aid, so that if you go for certain combos in certain situations, if you try to do the more critical or more damaging route and you try to time it, there's a chance you might drop it, right? Like if I go for this combo here, I'm not really a Luke player, so I'm not good at demonstrating this. But there's definitely a chance I can drop it going for this timing. So it does involve a little bit of skill expression there to actually learn the timing and master that, because you could just go for simpler combos and not risk going for the partial charges, or choose the more difficult routes to get more damage and stun. But I think that's really interesting when combined with his V-Trigger 2, which essentially just lets him cancel his knuckles into each other. And also his V-Skill 1 gives him another level to his knuckles. So you can see how all of these factors can stack on top of this knuckle system with the partial charges, and could lead to very, very damaging results, which I'll defer to better Luke players to show these off. So here we have Big Bird, one of the best Street Fighter V players in the business, showing off what Luke can do with these partial charges and V-Skill, or rather V-Trigger 2, in conjunction with each other. So there we have the charge cancels into each other, and just the ridiculous juggle properties of Luke. Everything will juggle. The DP is pretty much always guaranteed to juggle at the end, no matter what, and you can see how much damage you can get as a result of that. And keeping up the tradition of stealing from other players, here we have Big Bird here, stole this Luke combo from Sako. So I will steal the tweet from Big Bird in return, and you can see how ridiculous the possibilities are when all combined together. Oh my god. The juggles never end. And she is definitely dead. So, should this be doing this much damage? Should Luke get all these juggles? I don't know, but I do know for a fact that it takes a person to master the mechanics of Luke to really get the most out of him. Does he do a ton of damage without even optimizing? Yeah, to an extent, but it's really interesting to see players who actually push this character to its limits, and they definitely separate themselves from the rest of the pack by mastering the mechanics and having more skill expression when playing the character. And there you have it. That's how the new development team at the head of Street Fighter V managed to solve Street Fighter V's main problem. They released a full season of DLC characters that allow for the utmost player expression and skill in a game that was struggling with this in the past. And in my opinion, they solved Street Fighter V's biggest problem. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It really does help the channel out. We're nearing 100,000 subs on the channel, so I wanted to thank you all for all the support throughout the years and for continuing to support the videos. Let me know what you guys thought, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.